He's a film producer who launched his career with the excellent movie that you just watched, first movie, which ended up earning him a Best Film Award nomination from the Seattle International Film Festival and a Best Film nomination from the Independent Spirit Awards. Not bad for your very first film, right? He continued to champion fiercely independent voices with future films including Velvet Goldmine, right, which is a favorite around here, Being John Malkovich. And a personal favorite, 2004. Any Saved fans? Saved, excellent, right? Okay. Thank you, all right? Great movie. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandy Stern. Come on up. Cool. And then next up, little interesting factoid for you. Only 5 filmmakers have the distinction of being nominated for Best Screenplay and Best Director at the Independent Spirit Awards for the same film. That would be Alexander Payne for, listen to these names, Alexander Payne for Sideways, Christopher Nolan for Memento, the Coen brothers for Fargo, Quentin Tarantino for Pulp Fiction, and Allan Moyle for Pump Up the Volume. Absolutely. Among his over 12 films, Allan Moyle's films are love letters to youth culture and all the glorious soundtracks that go with it. And for Pump Up the Volume and Empire Records alone, he is a hero around these parts. All this, and he's like behind a holiday. Anyone know what Rex Manning Day is? Yeah, who can sing? Pretty impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, Allan Moyle. See, of course.
This guy a freak?
He knows me already.
Frida.
That's us. Here you are. So right off the bat, 35 years, nice crowd watching the film. What thoughts, what feelings, anything, or just kind of going through? I know you talked a little bit, if I may share, about being a little nervous about this, and like what's going through your mind right now about all this?
You know, my thought is when I go to a screening, I would pay extra not to hear the Q&A. Thank you all for staying and being part of this tonight. But you know, it's. We were talking a bit at dinner before. This was my first movie, and it was a completely, when I look back on it, it was just a charmed experience. It was the script, which we can talk about, and developing it, and getting the movie made, and making the movie, and then the actual first screening of this movie was at the Cannes Film Festival, which was an incredible experience. And then to have this movie live on for so many years and touch people and speak to people and still have people come up to me and say to me, that movie made such a difference in my life and in speaking to me. And then as Logan shared with you, working on the musical this past 10 years of my life, that when I sit here and go, wait, was that really 35 years ago? You know, and it was, again, the first movie I made.
You used to be so cute.
And, you know, I've never had an experience quite like this again. And I've been, so for 35 years, I've been hanging on in the business going, why doesn't it happen as easily and as effortlessly and wonderful and joyfully as this movie did? So that's what I bring tonight.
Thank you. What about you, Allan?
Sandy? Speak for me. You know, Sandy said a minute ago backstage, I'm nervous. And I'm nervous too, still.
That's kind of awesome.
Ask a question.
I will. You can ask a question right now. How about that?
You know, it's one of the reasons why we're behind the counter. Okay?
Well, honestly, that makes me all the more grateful that you're here. So thank you so much. I guess what I want, I have a few questions. I also want to hear from the audience, so start thinking up some questions of your own. But I'm wondering, especially with it being your first film, and what was the dynamic like between the two of you during production? And can you recall any key moments where collectively your creative partnership shaped a decision that ended up in the movie?
I'll answer that.
Please.
Sandy is extremely involved in every aspect, to the point of me just floating like a butterfly on the side while he takes care of everything. We must have, how many versions of the script did you demand that we do?
Every day.
Every day. And it was fun because he's so funny and smart, but at the same time, what a grind getting that script organized and then produced, and what scenes will stay in and what we could afford to do and all. It's a lot of little decisions that I wasn't up for, but he's built differently, and so you need a producer. You need a strong producer, and that's maybe one of the reasons why I haven't made any movies since, because there's not a lot of Sandy Sterns around, and I've become a little lazier. And next question.
Here's what I'll add to that, is that the director-producer relationship is a very specific one, and it's a very intimate one. And it's one that's built on trust and communication, and do we share the same vision, and what is our taste? And here it is, we lived with something, and a bit of context is that Allan Moyle had written a treatment that was 45 pages that I received because a friend of mine said, Sandy, this is so your kind of thing, it's so your taste, take a read, look at this treatment. I've never gotten a treatment that was 45 pages, okay? They're either 3, they're 10, they're 2 pages. This was 45 pages with some dialogue, with some descriptions, with sort of a structure to the piece. And I remember reading this and thinking, again, in terms of context and when we made this movie, we made this movie in 1989. And one of the things that I always sort of tell to the cast that we're doing the musical with, this was before cell phones. It was before there was internet. There was before there was any way of speaking, hearing, understanding the world at large, other than your shitty high school suburban existence. And for me, I was that kid. I was trapped in this suburban, miserable existence where I thought I was a freak and alone and queer. And the radio, for me, was my way out into the world. I knew that there was a world, I knew that there was a voice, I knew that there was something else besides this wasteland of suburbia that Allan Moyle tells you about right at the start of this movie. When I read this, I went, I've got to make this movie. I have to figure this out. So to me, this is like yesterday that I met Allan Moyle at the White Horse Tavern on Hudson Avenue in New York City. And I came as a producer prepared as to what I loved about this treatment and where I thought it could go.
The improvements, the corrections.
And Allan Moyle, I pitched to him in our very first meeting how I thought this movie should end. Over a glass of red wine, Allan Moyle stood up, the red wine spilled all over me, and said, we have to make this movie together. And that was the start of sort of a creative collaboration that continued on every page, in pre-production, prepping the movie, sort of,
Casting the movie.
Casting the
Very
movie,
good
all
at
the
casting.
department heads, making the movie, posting the movie, and celebrating the movie.
He even wrote scenes, but WGA will not allow him to be credited.
But I could never write the line, are you really as horny as a 10-pecker? That's Allan Moyle. And I've never worked with a writer that worked the way Allan Moyle did, where literally every single day I got new pages with new, interesting, and out there and brilliant ideas. That's what you want as a writer, and that's what you want from your director as a producer. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Thank you. That's great. And dovetails perfectly my next question, which is about casting. So, what's beautiful about Mark is, he's sardonic, he's incredibly magnetic, but he's also vulnerable, and he balances these beautifully. And it's hard for me to imagine anyone Christian Slater in this role at the time. And I'm wondering, A, what was the process of casting him and finding him, and B, is there any dialogue as to like how he as an actor, what he brought may have contributed to the final tone of the film or to the character?
Right.
In any way that wasn't on the written page?
I'm kind of prepared for this question. So the answer to that is as a producer, I was at the MIFED in Milan Film Festival where I saw an advanced screening of Heathers. And I just said, that is the hit for this movie. We have to get great. And at this point, Christian Slater was just sort of happening. He had done Gleaming the Cube, but Heathers hadn't come out yet. And I saw this movie and I went, Allan, this is our guy. I came back to LA, we sent the script to 2 actors. We sent it to Christian Slater and we sent it to Patrick Dempsey.
And Robert Downey Jr. Who said immediately, I'm too old.
Okay. So all I remember from this part of our history is we were both living in New York at the time. We were flying out to LA to meet Christian and Patrick Dempsey. I, being a first-time producer, were like, what am I going to wear? Like, I went to a store in Soho to buy something for me to wear to meet these 2 actors, and in the store is Patrick Dempsey. This is a true story. And Patrick Dempsey is there with this woman who is, I didn't know who she was, but let's say Patrick was 20, she was 55. And he says, this is my wife. And I was like, what? And he said, this is my wife and manager. And I said, well, what's funny is I'm buying clothes to wear when I meet you next week.
You keep having these really fateful run-ins with people. That's sort of like...
This was just the oddest one, though. So we both come to LA. We're meeting these 2 actors. Patrick Dempsey, we never met because his cat got sick and there was a problem and he needed to reschedule it. And Christian Slater comes to lunch with us. And this is, one of the things that I do that Logan knows, that Allan knows as well, is that I'm on the faculty at AFI, and I always tell my students about this particular story. Christian Slater comes to lunch with us. We're at the Sunset Marquee. In 30 years of doing this, I've never had an actor come, a movie star, or on the verge of being a movie star, come to a lunch, and by the end of the lunch say, I want to do your movie. It's never happened that way again. Never happens that way. They want to say, I got to talk to my manager, I got to talk to my people, I got to think about it, let me reread it, will you address these notes? Christian was all in. First lunch, done. We looked at each other and we went, this was our guy, he wants to do it, we're done. And Christian Slater was attached to the project. And to this day, he's still a dear friend of both of ours. We love Christian, he's such a fan. My partner's in the back, we went to his Hollywood Walk of Fame. He just had his, what do you get there? Your handprints, footprints? And it is, he will say this, and he shares it, and so many people in their speeches talked about it. It is his favorite movie. He's so proud of this movie, and he's such a delightful human being, and it's like we can't think of this movie without Christian.
And I have to say on a side note, also about the cast, and it's a testament to both your casting and the acting. You kind of ruined Annie Ross for me. So Annie Ross plays the principal in this film, and after this movie, Shortcuts, the Basket Case trilogy, every time she's on screen, I just feel vile and angry. This is Annie Ross to me. It's her performance in this movie, and I'm like, oh God, it's the principal from Above the Line. I hate it so much. By the way, who cheered for Gleaming the Cube? God bless you all. This is why I love this audience. Love you guys.
Just note, Annie Ross couldn't say one line in the same way with continuity twice.
Oh no! But she says that.
She was a really good friend of Allan Moyle's manager, and that's how Annie Ross came to us into this movie. And she'd never.
I'm sorry, she gives Nurse Ratched a run for her money. She's just, she's a great hissable authoritarian figure in film. She does a great job. I'll ask one question, then I'll turn it over to you guys. The film doesn't sugarcoat themes of teenage alienation, suicide, depression, isolation, sexual identity, which is part of the reason that so many of us responded to it when it came out. This is kind of a two-part question, but first is, how did you navigate presenting these themes whilst also keeping the story accessible and at times very, very funny? They're pretty serious themes, but you don't, you feel the weight of them in the moment. The film is so balanced, though, tonally. And then also considering those themes, we talked a little bit about it at dinner. Were there any particular battles with the studio over content, language, subject matter, or tone, anything along those lines?
Well, the blip on the road of this easy, effortless, joyful experience is we had this movie set up at Island Pictures. And they were like, we love Christian Slater, we love Allan Moyle, we love this script, we want to make the movie, we're making the movie, we're doing deals with you. And again, before cell phones, I get a call, a message, saying that the head of Island wanted to talk to me. And he calls me, and I remember I was at a movie theater, at a payphone in a lobby, calling him, and he said to me, Sandy, I tell you what, we love this movie, but we're not going to make this movie if you keep the kid as being queer. And I said, well, then I guess you're not making the movie. And I hung the phone. And again, the charmed life of this movie is New Line Cinema came in 3 weeks later and said, we're making the movie with the queer kid, with the scene, with the movie that you want to make. And they did. And you know what? There's one other side note to that story, which is really a great story, is that the kid that we cast to play Malcolm was the only actor that we flew out from New York as a real theater actor. And he was at the time, he was like the hot kid in New York, and his name is Matt McGrath. Matt McGrath flew out to LA to shoot that one pivotal scene in the movie. We then tested the movie, and the audience just didn't get him. They didn't feel for him, they didn't respond to him. And there was a kid in the audience. It was just like this. We screened the movie, you're watching the movie, we do the Q&A, and they were confused about the kid, and they didn't feel, and there was a kid in the audience who asked a question about this scene, and I whispered to Allan Moyle, and I go, there's Malcolm. There's our kid. We ended up reshooting the Malcolm scene with a kid from this audience screening that was recruited, that had a question, that had a comment about the scene because it wasn't working. And this kid was the kid that you see in the movie. It's kind of a freaky, fun story. Never acted before, never acted since. He was completely in the audience, and we reshot him in that scene. And Matt McGrath, for those of you that know him, has gone on and had an amazing career. And he's still credited in the movie. And you see him in this last scene, that is sort of what we call the healing speech, where they're all in these jackets. And but he's not in the movie, in that pivotal role. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Did you have something? I saw you do kind of one of these.
No, I'm here to trip out.
Good. But what about that question about the balancing of the subject matter whilst keeping it very, very humorous? Did that come organically?
That
just
is
in the
Allan
writing, or-
Moyle, okay? Again, as a
I don't sit there thinking,
producer,
is this balanced?
Is it just writing organically?
So don't ask me how it's balanced. But I have to say it again. If I was left to my own, I wouldn't be able to balance it. So having a good partner,
That's awesome.
it is awesome. And it
Would
hasn't
you
happened
say that
since.
your original vision of this was darker or lighter, and then?
Well, that's a good question. I write darker, and then somebody says, "Oh, that's unnecessary." Wouldn't you say that it got lighter as we did more and more drafts?
it's very true to the tone of the piece that you, of what was your vision of this movie. It's very, again, as a producer, you get your director all over the film. And what you do as a producer is you support that vision. And Allan's personality is on every frame of that movie. And the balance of sort of the edge and the humor and the comedy and the gravitas is all of him.
How much of Mark was in you, Allan, when you wrote this?
I wish I had a good answer, about my, I was born in a thunderstorm, but I was a middle class, normal person. Father was a doctor, loving mother, had a lot of advantages, and some of the angst that you see in the movie is made up.
Was it observed? I mean,
The opening line, you ever get the feeling that everything, what's the opening line of the movie? What is it, Ronnie?
Everything in
Ronnie,
America.
Sandy, what is it?
Audience?
Everything in America is
Totally
fucked up.
fucked up.
Okay, so I don't believe that. So don't ask me where it came from. Maybe Sandy wrote it, because he wrote a lot of the movie. Maybe not that line.
Well, let's turn it over.
The world is fucked up, by the way.
Well, yeah.
I've learned since.
Amen. We'll start with you, sir.
The movie came out at a time when many films had, let's say, gratuitous sexual content. And this film, I think effectively for the character, sets this sexual tension and emotional tension between your leads. How much was this part of the film development, or how did that come about?
I don't know what you're talking about, Sandy.
Well, I'm going to take your question and answer it in a very kind of specific way, and that is, we had Christian Slater, who's our girl, and it was a really interesting quest to find Samantha Mathis and to find that girl. And again, what's the funny thing about filmmaking is you cast your guy and you cast the girl and you show up and you hope they want to fuck each other. Okay? That there's chemistry, that there's something there.
Please don't say fuck.
And we went through every hot girl in Hollywood wanted to play this role, okay? So the casting of Christian Slater was key to this movie, but the other 50% was Samantha Mathis. And for Samantha, it was, we went through, and I'm telling you, I was just telling this to my partner the other night, is that Drew Barrymore, right out of rehab, came in to read for this movie, okay? Everybody wanted to be Nora. The problem is there are very few Noras in the world that have that power, that have that sexuality, that have that force. And we didn't know Samantha Mathis. We didn't know who this girl was. We had a great casting director. She brought in all of these sort of the hot girls in town, that everybody that was in Heathers came into audition. Everybody wanted to do this movie. We didn't find the girl. Our casting director said, just wait, I know who it is, I know it is, she's in vacation, she's in Greece. She comes in, she reads for us, and every girl that came in the room, we'd always ask questions. Where'd you grow up? What was your high school like? What are you doing now? Where do you work? Samantha came in, she read the scene, and she left. And we were like, who is that girl? Okay, that's the closest Nora we found yet. We then narrow it down. We do a screen test. We had 3 Noras that were in the running. All of them were non-name girls. Samantha comes in, they do it, we do it with Christian, and Christian says to me, well, I'd fuck her. Thus, Samantha Mathis.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's going to be brought up at some point, but I'm very interested in the music selection. This was like one of the first, I bought on tape that I ever bought, and it exposed me to so many different new bands and rap and all that kind of stuff. I just want to know about the selection of the music, and how specific it was while it was being shot.
This is an Allan Moyle question.
It's like on a cue by cue basis, you try different songs against the material. A lot of trying out. I didn't have a vision, and frankly, I didn't know some of these bands. It's not like I'm hip, but we had a good team.
Yeah, but Allan, the soundtrack to this movie is so Allan. Okay, you will not take credit for it. It is so Allan. And what I will say that's also interesting about this is that we had a good music supervisor, but we had an executive at New Line who was basically tasked with the music supervision of this movie, and his name is Toby Emmerich. Toby Emmerich went on to be the chairman of Warner Brothers. Okay, he was our music supervisor for this movie.
Oh, wow.
But he would come in with suggestions, and Allan
And
would curate them.
the money to say Alan's crazy choice of song. This song, he would say, okay, well, I'll buy that, even though it was not in the budget and so on. Crucial that the producer is willing to spring for the right song. They're all expensive.
But I think even on our temp track, we had the Leonard Cohen from Allan, from way back.
Didn't we have pushback on that? Didn't somebody say that's a dreary song?
No doubt.
That's why it works.
Oh, I know, I remember now. We had Everybody Knows covered by a singer,
Concrete Blonde.
Concrete Blonde, and they're super hip.
Yeah.
And in the end, we liked Leonard's version, Rest in Peace, better. It was darker. And by then, we had enough confidence to go for what we wanted.
Anyone else discover Leonard Cohen through this film? So a gift right there. Thank you. Pixies? Anyone else? Just yeah, that was my introduction to Pixies. So yeah, very, very formative soundtrack, I'm sure, for a lot of us and a lot of people out there. It's a legendary soundtrack. Yeah, let's take another one from the audience. You over there in the hat.
I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how I can talk right now. First of all, thank you. This is the soundtrack.
Thank you.
My musical taste came out in 1990, and 1990 was still the 80s, and I think that you made the most honest 80s movie. They're not sincere. Like, most of the 80s movies were just bullshit, and there was the jock and the nerd, and this really hit home. And I was just wondering, did you feel when you were making this movie that it would have that cultural impact then on society, and then 35 years later, the societal impact that it could have?
I would say I had no idea. How about that? You know, as a producer, I look for things that speak to me and I think will resonate with audiences. Did I think it was going to be that kind of movie? No. Did I think it would be a good movie? Yes. Was I okay in sort of living in that space? Yes. This movie and the world and the life beyond it has been beyond my wildest expectations. The fact that we are here 35 years later in this theater with you and it's still speaking to you and it's 10 o'clock at night and you're all so engaged is like, we never thought that would, just, you don't even think that way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, its themes live on. I mean, it's surreal to think about what's happened with radio. The concept of pirate radio probably wouldn't even enter as a concept that today's youth would even like. What is that? You know, a station with pirates on it? Like, it's just not something that exists. And then also to have a platform that would reach, let's say, a class or a neighborhood. Everyone has that platform now with Facebook.
Wow.
You know,
That's so mind-blowing to think about.
it's, yeah, I mean, and so
Everyone can have their own pirate radio on the net.
everyone has a platform with a built-in audience that's listening to everything
It's
that
a
they
good
say.
thing we made it when we did.
Yeah. But having said all that, the film continues to resonate, because even though we're miles away from the sort of the technology of the film and how he's able to reach people, we still grapple with these themes. You know, it's almost chilling to watch a movie about authoritarianism today.
You know, one of the things I realized from this movie, and in terms of looking back on it, is the power of movie, of cinema, of what we get to do, of stories that we choose to tell and put out there in the world, and how it actually can impact change and touch people and move people and have look at life. And that I wasn't aware of when I started. And to me, that was such a sort of heady and intoxicating part of being a filmmaker, that I realized that I could go into a video store in some weird island in Greece and there's my movie. And some kid there it's speaking to, and that to me is like, I never thought that, never saw that until some space from the making of the movie.
You should also say you invented podcasts, because I think that's
I have this podcast as well. But I mean, what's interesting though is that everyone's got access to these. And like I was thinking as I'm watching, I'm like, okay, if this was written today, what platform would Mark have access to where he would have an audience that would be feverishly listening? And let's see, he had a podcast that got really, really popular. But I just feel like all the conversation is diluted, you know. But again, the themes ring true. They still ring true today, I'm sure. And then you see the ebb and flow of politics and everything, and you know, we're back to people being pushed into closets.
The radio had just, to me, so much power then.
Yeah.
That was my outlet. That's where I remember as a kid in high school, I escaped into the world of WBAI in New York.
Oh, wow.
Midnight radio. It was like, oh, there is a world out there. There is hope. There is something other than this suburban world.
Anyone else remember when K-Rock was good? We had a good station back then. I do have curious, and you know, this was your first feature film as a producer. Looking back, if you could go back and whisper something to yourself then about what this film would become or what choices you made during the process, what might you say to younger Sandy Stern on set,
I would say,
toiling away on this movie?
keep the air alive.
And that's a very esoteric question, but what about you, Allan? You got anything on that?
What I say to myself?
Okay, 35 years, ...
I'm not a thoughtful person.
I doubt that sincerely.
I can't even imagine an answer to that, because every day I feel lucky, and this stuff, I don't even set out to create anything. It all seems to just come together with the help of a team. And so I'm in that process right now. I'm trying to write a 6-episode TV series. And luckily, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm enjoying it. So,
I can relate to them.
You can?
The beginning of this place, yeah, it's really.
Oh yeah, wow, his story, I want to make a movie about this creature. Do you know his story? Well, consider yourselves lucky to be sitting here. This is one of the last art houses, indie houses.
I hope not, but, you know.
One of the best.
Thank you.
How many of you have seen this movie 30 years ago?
Wow.
So most of you are returning.
Opening week?
Opening weekend.
What brought you there? I mean, was there advertising?
15-year-old me wanted to see. I had seen Heathers. I had seen Tucker. I was a fan of Christian Slater.
Yep.
And the movie spoke to me, and I instantly ran out and bought the soundtrack.
Wow.
I have it here with.
Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. That's so charming. Well, let's talk to you later. What happened to you?
Jeff Marvin, in the middle, do you have a question?
I do. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Allan. So, you gave every teenager who saw this movie the two most teasing, edging kisses in film. They are so, you cannot stop watching the screen. And the one that is stylistically stuck in my brain for every movie I watch now when I look at a kiss scene is the one after they have their special night and they see each other on campus and they have that sort of awkward conversation. And you have them almost dancing where they're kind of circling each other and you're way back with a long lens and they're just kind of like dancing. How did you think to make it that way, and why did you make us wait so long for their lips to touch?
I don't know about the length of time, Sandy could answer that, but I remember on the day we're shooting it, I got a shit from the studio for shooting a scene that's uncuttable. Oh, it's uncuttable. Because they were swirling around and there was no way to cut it.
You're so close on it too.
Yeah, and I think that was luck. And but the second kiss, which is the second kiss? I don't remember that
The
one.
first one is when they're in the backyard, and the second one is when they're walking through the campus, when you just.
They kiss in that scene, or they graze? Well, have you ever seen? Well, she's not here, so I can say it. But have you ever seen her mouth?
I have. I just thought about that big.
Yeah. Sandy?
You know, what's funny is it is such a key moment in the movie, and it's such a key scene, and here's the most interesting part of it, is that scene was not scripted. That was Allan with the camera saying, let's get the two of you walking through the quadrant, okay? And because, I met you at the musical, one of the things I could say to you is that that is the magic of movies, when you put the camera up close and your two protagonists, your two stars, literally like just create that magic with the light, with the camera, without words, with close-up, with eyes, with mouth, with what's not said. That's what you get in a movie. What's missing in the musical is how do you find that moment in the musical? And that's the moment in the movie that is so lyrical, and it's so beautiful, and it's so poetic, and it was so not in the script, but it was in the magic of what Allan saw of our two co-stars falling in love. And they did on this movie.
Actually, luckily.
They fell in love while making the movie, and that's what you're seeing in that scene. It's the magic of capturing that moment.
There's a truism, directing is casting, and in this case it's so true that their chemistry, you can't direct that.
But we caught it.
Yeah,
And that's the magic.
luckily.
It's always wild to me when I'm watching a movie with iconic performances such as this to imagine, like, wow, this was written, just example off the top of my head, this was written before Samuel L. Jackson was cast as Jules or Brando was cast as Don Corleone, because the performances just seem sort of part of just the whole journey of it. It's just fascinating to hear these stories about casting, not having Christian Slater in mind as you write Mark, and then finding the person and having to be perfect for it. So that would be really rewarding to find.
It's nerve-wracking though.
Is it,
If you've written a part that there's no actress available.
Yeah. Do you think of it, well, you specifically, I've heard different answers to this, but do you think of someone when you're writing something, or are you just strictly 100% of the character, we'll figure out casting later?
No, I always think of Robert Downey Jr. For every part.
Is he about like less than zero by then, yeah?
For
Yeah.
that kind of energy.
Less than zero was before the volume, right? Yeah, I think so, yeah. So, yeah, he's already, yeah, absolutely.
And as a producer, when you're reading a script, you're always thinking about who can you cast. Because movies get made by the cast. That's how movies get financed. So it's sort of like, are these castable roles? Is that something that's going to attract a movie star? So when I read something, I'm always thinking casting. I'm not thinking of a person, but I'm thinking, will it attract 10 actors that could get that movie made.
Let me ask a question. You brought up the musical. I mentioned at the beginning how we met at the musical. There's been this resurgence, this thing that's happening where classic cult films are being adapted into musicals, and I've been to a bunch, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You've got musicals on just about everything. Reanimator, Showgirls the musical. Which one?
Death Becomes Her.
Death Becomes Her the musical. What's that? Back to the Future.
Wow.
And yeah, no, absolutely. And I go, if I love the film, I go see it, and I'm always curious, but like I mentioned to you, like I mentioned to them, it blew me away.
It's really strangely good considering that we all loved the first one. I was prepared to hate it. I never told you.
I was prepared to hate it.
How could I not hate it, Sandy?
How can you not hate it?
How could I not hate it? Because it's the musical of something that we worked so hard on. And, musicals, gay.
Excuse me. But they are, yeah.
But it was really, really good.
The movie was 35 years ago. I've been on the musical now for 10, okay? I have not shown Allan Moyle any part of it until 2 months ago, till you were in the audience, till Jeff Garvin was in the audience. And I wanted to get it to a place that I knew what we had was really good. And because it was, talk about being nervous.
You must have been shitting bricks.
I was nervous.
Just from the little time I've known Allan.
I was nervous, not to see him, but again, I really believe in this musical, and I think it's really special, and I think it's really beautiful, and it's going to have a life, and all of you are going to go and see this musical. When Allan came to the theater, I was confident enough in knowing what I had to know that if I like it this much, he's going to like it.
It just nails everything. It nails the tone. It works. I don't know what to say. Like, I highly recommend it. I'm not being paid to say that. I was so deeply
all
impressed.
Original music to speak to the music. It's
Not a
music
jukebox
from
opera.
this.
No.
No,
Yeah.
there's none of this. Yeah.
So how did that happen? How did the conversation even start of,
About the musical.
yeah, let's take this to the stage and put songs in it? I mean, how did that genesis?
The writer, the book writer and the songwriter, two young guys out of New York, like everybody in this room, had a love and affinity for this movie, and they saw what it could be as a musical. And they then reached out to Allan Moyle and said, Allan, could we run with it and try to write this musical? And he was like, huh? Okay, go, whatever, do what you want to do. And then Allan said to me, there's these two young writers, and a writer and a lyricist, and they're interested, and I'm going to put them in touch with you. And they put them in, and they reached out to me, and I sort of read, again, not an outline, but sort of a treatment for the musical, and I went, and as a guy who grew up in New York, whose first love is theater, and for those of you that have seen Saved, I did that as a musical in New York, that I just thought, this could be a great musical, and it's just, and when they pitched it to me, and when I read it, and when I heard some of the music, I was like, yes, I'm in. So that's how and that's only been 10 years ago. Okay.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. What is next for it? Where's it at?
Well, we had a very positive reception at this reading, and the great thing is all of the LA theaters that came to see it all want to do it.
Great.
So we're trying to right now build the path from Los Angeles to the Broadway. Okay.
Amazing.
So that's what we're working on right now, which will be sort of a 3-theater sort of Yellow Brick Road to Broadway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I got hopes for this.
It's fantastic. Yes.
My thanks to you and to your team for the film, and for your emphasis on it taking a team to create it. That's just a really awesome thing to hear. It sounds like there's that wonderful mix of both the humility and the pride, so thanks for that. Seeing this film for the first time in 2025, and one of the things that stood out to me in 2025 was Arizona. it's just interesting to see this film, at least in setting, and I may have missed if there were location notes in the credits, so my apologies. I was wondering, happy accident, logistics, was there a story behind Arizona as setting and?
We wanted somewhere bleak. Do you remember anything more than that?
Yeah, well, you know, again, it's sort of, you follow the money, okay? The money was, we're gonna shoot this movie in Los Angeles with New Line Cinema. So what could we double in Los Angeles that is sort of nowhere USA? That has palm trees but is not specific. And we sort of came up with Arizona, and we scouted all these different schools. And the interesting thing about the school that we shot at, which was at Saugus High School, which is in Valencia, was where there was a high school shooting not 3 years ago. It was at the same school that we shot this at, was at Saugus High. But the idea was, well, where else could we set this that we could shoot it here, but it is not California? We didn't want to make it Los Angeles. So we wanted to make it sort of somewhere.
It's at Middle America.
Correct, correct. And in the script, it was never stipulated where this setting was. It was just Middle America.
Good, I haven't got to the back in a while. Anyone towards the, yes, way back in the back row.
I guess it's about inspiration. So, Allan, what was your inspiration for writing this film? What was the germination? And then for both of you, what is your inspiration filmically? Whether it's a screen adaptation you thought was so great, or I'm curious for both of you.
Well, the first question, there was a period of time in England where they had offshore radio stations. Does anyone remember that? I think it lasted for a year. If you couldn't get certification from the English government to open a radio station, you could go under the channel on a rowboat and broadcast. And that was actually the first time I thought of pirate radio. And so that's the answer to that. And then I don't remember the second part of the question.
Films that inspired you.
Was there a film or a screenplay or something by Pat Chayefsky, I think, or a screenplay?
I have my list of movies that I love, like Memo from Turner with Mick Jagger. What's the name of that movie? Performance, yeah. That's my favorite movie. And although I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, Nicholas Roeg. Yeah, I have my heroes. But at the time, it's all a blur. At the time, I didn't have a plan, if that's what you're asking. I didn't know. So I was floating forward and consider myself lucky. And all the influences from all the great movies. Cassavetes. It was the first time in a movie theater my mind was blown by seeing these guys smoking cigarettes and drinking and kibitzing among themselves. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that too. And I'm not one for planning or knowing even that there is a plan. That's why someone like me needs someone like Sandy to put it all together. And it's kind of a miracle. I haven't been able to do it since. And so thank you, Sandy.
You know, just to piggyback on that for just one sentence, is that, you know, as a producer, I never know what I'm looking for until I read something that speaks to me. And it wasn't like, oh, I wanted to make a high school movie about a kid. It was like, it was just the story and this character, and the voice of the writer and the director is what inspires me. And that's what I look for when I'm picking and kind of figuring out projects and stories that I want to put out in the world.
Got a couple favorite movies? Just curious on that same topic. Anything that, Sandy, that inspired you, or?
You know, it's like I'm a Preston Sturges guy. I love and if, you know, if you look at my body of work, it is like it is all sort of character-based comedy. It's sort of what I'm interested in, and sort of, you know, and teen angst. Okay, put those together, and you got some piece of the puzzle.
Great. When Allan was talking about pirate UK stations, did I hear someone say there's a documentary?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, the movie.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Fire Radio, the boat that rocked.
Both that rock?
Yeah,
I could look it up tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Pirate Radio, The Boat That Rocked.
Yeah, AKA the boat that rocked.
Right on.
It's a good movie?
Good
Oh, it's a
soundtrack.
documentary.
Good soundtrack. No, it's a comedy.
It's like a biopic.
British comedy.
A biopic.
Interesting.
Yes. Do you have time for a couple more? You guys feel like, oh, excellent. All right,
Fun.
we're right in the middle there. No, but yeah, you.
Me?
That's you.
Okay. Okay. Just want to say, thanks for the movie. It's awesome. We all know that. But I wanted to ask, one of my favorite things about this movie is the dynamic that you forged with the teen angst and the anger and the confusion and the horniness and all that junk. But then you cut to the parents and the adults, and it's a great dynamic of the people that care and the people that don't, or are vindictive and evil. So tackling that balance, I think you did very well. And how did you achieve that and make it feel so real? Because it feels very organic rather than just being like some stereotype for each person.
I thought the musical did better with the parents, much better. And so you might want to see that if you're interested in the dynamic. And I feel that the parents were, compared to the 2 stars, were flat to me. And what about you, Sandy? What did you think?
I remember this really clearly is in the editing room. We had a cut of the movie that was like clearly over 2 hours, okay? And what we found is stay with Christian and Samantha. And the parents and the adults were sort of, you know, filling that out. So I'm glad to hear that the balance still holds up after 35 years, but there was a lot of cutting back of the adults and keeping it on those two. And that's story.
That's really interesting, because one of the feedback I gave you over dinner, and I mentioned a little bit, was that not only did the musical do a great job, you know, nailing the story, but that it actually added some elements that I thought really, and those elements that I was thinking of were the parents and how you fleshed them out and the relationships.
I love the parents in the musical.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
And of course they bring a lot, the songs bring a lot of resonance that is impossible in a movie. Much more, I mean, it's much more moving than a movie.
Yeah, that's what like, I don't
One
remember
of the
this.
single biggest
Yeah.
conceits
I'm gay.
in the musical
Well,
is
hey.
we got rid of his mother and father, and now it's just his father. He's a single parent who's divorced. The mother left the family, and the father is now the police commissioner, who is sort of on the hunt to figure out who this kid is, and we don't know, and he doesn't know that that kid is his kid.
Yeah, that's pushing it, but it worked.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It works really well.
Well, my parents are here showed me this movie when I was 6
A bit louder, dear.
Sorry. My parents showed me this movie when I was like 6 years old, and it still resonates with me today. But to piggyback on what you were saying, this movie was 35 years ago. Is there anything that you changed in the musical to help
Good question.
help the generate like my generation or the future generations to really understand your message?
I think
And
the
can you
message
find-
is the message, and that hasn't changed, and I think the story that we tell in the musical is so true to the movie. I think the single biggest change in what the writers brought to me from my first meeting with them is we're going to make the father the police commissioner. And I thought that was a great change and a great take on the
Can I
movie.
ask why?
Why?
Like why that change?
Well, because the stakes are so much higher than for a character where it's just not like in the movie right now, they're just like going off to work, you know, but in the musical, the father is tasked with who is this kid and we've got to stop him, and my job is on the line. I got here to be this person, and this kid is ruining our town.
And when a character is singing, they bring so much humanity to it that's missing in the movie.
Well, that's the beauty of musicals, okay? It's sort of like the idea of a musical is that these moments are so elevated that you have to break out into song to express the heightened emotion. And there's so many beautiful moments in the movie that lend themselves to that. And that's why I thought, oh, this could be a great musical.
And I will say, like, on paper, it might sound like it's a kind of a gimmicky change, but the writing makes it work really well, and the singing and the performances and libretto really.
Great cast.
And I
really
will
makes it work.
just say this, because, again, to Jeff Garvin in the center, a big fan of the script, came to see the show because he was afraid that we were gonna fuck up the movie. Read his piece on Substack, okay? It is a brilliant piece Jeff Garvin wrote about his fear of seeing this movie desecrated by its musical, and what he wrote is just a beautiful sort of homage to the musical, and a valentine to the musical. I
Sorry.
should say.
And what was your name?
Izzy.
Izzy, gotta ask, are those your parents with you tonight? That's so rad. You both rock. I love this audience.
R-rated
wow.
movie
This-
for 6-year-olds. Okay, parents, we need to talk.
You could go to jail for bringing your 6 years old.
Can I, parents, my parents took me to see Blue Velvet when I was 9.
Oh.
And I can say this there would be no Frida cinema without that. That's a fact. So, you both rock. Mr. Mark Waters.
We have another obvious musical theater connection that I don't recall being mentioned, Ellen Green.
Oh,
yes.
So that has musical written all over it. The queer me was excited to see her in something after Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
So how did she get connected with this project?
Well, you have an hour? Okay.
I don't.
The
It was a
short-
journey.
The
Yes.
short version of this, it's really funny, is that because I just saw Ellen recently, and I invited her to see the musical because she lives in LA, and when I told her that her character had been written out of the musical, she was not happy. And she says, I don't understand, the good teacher, she needs her own song, okay? It was like, of course she does, but anyway. Ellen Green, we met at a party in Hollywood, okay? And it was like, I, like you, grew up watching Little Shop of Horrors, watching Ellen Green going, oh my God, I'm in gay heaven. Ellen Green is at this party with me, okay? And I just went over, I introduced myself to her, I told her we had this movie, would she consider doing it? And she was a friend of our manager, of Alan's manager, and then she read it, and then she drove Allan Moyle crazy, and it was the most difficult 2 weeks I had on the movie was with Ellen Green on the set.
That's where a good producer comes in. Because I'm too busy directing, so take this lady for a walk around the block.
And he's not kidding, that's exactly what it was like.
Two singers in different ones.
Oh, wait.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a quick two-part question. First, has to do with Bart grabbing the record of Jimmy Swaggart, and what did he do with that? And secondly, I've always viewed this movie as a cinematic cousin to the 1979 cult classic Over the Edge, directed by the great Jonathan Kaplan, who we sadly lost. The casting Andy Romano as Mr. Murdoch, was that a intentional thread or just happenstance?
Do you remember?
It was not intentional.
Okay.
He came in to read and we were send him to wardrobe. He was great.
Right, yeah.
Right here?
I know, right here. Right, second row.
I just want to say thank you very much. I think everybody's pretty much asked all the questions that I had, but I wanted to say I first was introduced to this movie by my older brother who was 19. I was only 12, so I was not able to go see it in theaters. He came home and told me, you're gonna love it. Oh, we'll rent it later. Don't tell mom. And I did. I sat there. I was glued to it, completely fixated. Like everybody sat here. Music touched me. I became a huge fan of all the artists that were featured, all the things. I know you said that you didn't anticipate this being as big as it was or touching this many, but hopefully this shows you that we've all been affected by this movie completely. Like, I'm 47 now, and I'm still looking for my mark. But my question is you said there's like a 2.5 hour cut that we'd all probably love to see. What is in there that maybe you couldn't get here in this cut?
You mean in a new cut, if someone offered us the opportunity?
Yeah.
Is the footage even there? And
What would you have liked to have put in there that didn't make it?
our favorite little bits and pieces, which have to be cut out because the movie has to keep its momentum. You know, there's a lot of color scenes that don't get in because in the editing room, you have to make choices. Stuff gets cut out. Luckily, I can't remember anything, but Veronica, but you probably remember everything,
So
right?
you remember anything in particular that you're like, gosh, I wish that
No,
was back in?
there's nothing in this that I miss.
Oh, wow, I'm happy to hear
Nothing that I
that.
That's
miss.
cool.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's, keep them wanting more, okay?
I'm so glad that you hung up on that guy who said what's the name of the character who was? Malcolm, no Malcolm. Said he was angry.
Look at you got applause from that. I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, that was I'm 19 at the time and really beginning independent studios, and queer cinema was certainly starting, but at the teenage level, to have a character in high school talk about his sexuality was new to me. I think most of the films I'd seen that had LGBT characters with themes, they were adults.
Andy
They're
Warhol.
grown-ups. Right, or Joey D'Alessandro in any Warhol films, no, for
Little
sure.
Joe.
But, Little Joey, yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, but somehow no one went to any of John Hughes's high schools that was gay, or openly so.
Interesting.
I didn't see him, so it was really exciting to see that character. Years before, Gregor Rocky and other filmmakers would come out and present characters to me that I saw myself reflected in. It was a very early and exciting. Thank you for keeping that character in. What am I saying? I was 14. 35 years, not 30. So I was 14 when Bullet for the Volume came out. Yeah, and it was really huge for me.
That kid was me. So when I developed this and found it and wanted to make it, it was its DNA. How could you take that out?
Yeah.
It was like, to me, it wasn't even like a part of the conversation. And I was so young and naive at the time that I was like, fuck you, we'll find other money. And we did.
But I hear this all the time when I make a decision that's just like pure gut, where I'm like, no, of course not. Look, have you stopped to reflect on the fact that you made that call and that a lot of people wouldn't have? A lot of people would have gone for the money, the ease, we have a studio, we're ready to go, and despite their best conviction, would have said, okay. So I hope you are proud. I hope honestly that you give yourself a lot of credit for making that call. Especially your first movie. You took a huge risk on your first movie to say no to a sure thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm curious about the title, which to me works as a metaphor, with volume being the growing crowd in the baseball field, and but I don't. If I might be wrong, but it's never referenced directly in the movie, and could have been. It could have been a graffiti piece on the wall or something, or it could have been. I thought a title could have been "Talk Hard."
That was one of the titles, and that was my original favorite title.
Okay.
But somebody.
It's a good story. It actually leads in from the last question, okay? So Allan and I, when we developed the script, it was called Lean On Me, okay? And we had Talk Hard, and we had Steal the Air, and we had all these titles. The guy who was going to make the movie, that was going to finance the movie if we excised the gay character, worked for a company called Island Pictures. Pump Up the Volume was a big song for Island Pictures at the time. We hated that title, okay? We were like, we don't want that title. That's like a bad, cheesy title.
We don't like the song either.
So you are correct. The song is never in the movie. But he wanted to tie into his music catalog the title with our movie. When he then left the project over the conversation we've just discussed, brought it to New Line, and New Line said, "We love this title." So we were like, okay, we're done. Okay, you want to make the movie and keep the gay kid and give us that title, we'll make it. And that's how Pump Up the Volume. But to this day, you know, it's like, it's never been a title. You know, movie titles are really tricky. And this is not, and when you see the musical, there is a song in it called and it's good.
And Talk Hard is sexy. I always think of a hard on.
Of course. We got time maybe for two more. So number one.
Yeah, disregarding the technology aspect, is this a movie that could still be made today?
I don't know why it couldn't be.
I mean, just with all the remakes and sequels in the Hollywood landscape today, I mean.
Well, here's the difference. Again, it's like what movies inspire me. I've made 4 high school movies. This movie was made for $6 million. My last high school movie was made for $600,000. That's the difference. It is what you have, what money is available to make content that you're interested in telling has gone from millions to hundreds of thousands to make these kinds of movies. You can make this movie, but not at this budget.
Should be cheaper now that everything is digital. Should be cheaper to make that. I remember how much 400-foot roll of Kodak negative costs, which you don't have to, that dates me a bit.
But you know, the nice thing about making movies is you don't get to make that many movies, and people need to make money to make movies of this sort of these stories. So people, you have to pay the crew, and are you paying somebody $20 a week? You're paying them $200 a week. And ideally, you want to create a world where you're paid for your services. And when you're making a movie, yes, you can make a movie for really cheap, but nobody gets paid to make those movies. And that's where it's really kind of like.
Were we DGA?
You were.
But the actors were not.
There was also, it was
All
a
SAG?
union movie.
Really?
You can't shoot a movie in LA of this magnitude with Christian Slater in it that is not
Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. We were definitely union when we shot this. Yeah.
And that makes it harder for us because there's a lot of rules. But we weren't even thinking about it, were we?
That's why.
So that was Sandy's job, put it that way.
Yeah. The answer is yes.
You got our last question.
This is not a question. I just wanted to let you know, this was the movie where I decided that I could be a fan of movies.
Oh.
Beforehand, my parents would take me to whatever Blockbuster or whatever. I had just gotten my license, and one day on a Saturday or Sunday, decided I was gonna drive to the theater and see a movie, and this was it. And that's where I decided that I could be just a fan of movies.
Wow.
Thank you.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're here from Washington to watch this?
Yeah, Olympia, Washington.
Wow. You must be a very interesting person.
No.
And you know what, again, when we started this, and I end with this, is thank all of you for coming out tonight, for supporting movies like this, for being part of the conversation, for, you know, that comment. And when you ask the question, how does it feel 35 years later? It's comments like that, it's the love we feel from you that does make it all matter. So thank you.
Give yourselves a round of applause. You're all why we're here as well. There is no free cinema without our audience. So just echoing that, thank you all so much for being here, for watching a 35-year-old film with us, and for sticking around for this Q&A. Tonight was very special. Thank you both so much for coming. Seriously.